Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time we're tackling money. You know, the stuff we never seem to have enough of. Well, get this, before dollar bills and credit cards, money was a whole different animal.
You're telling me we're actually going way back to a time before money even existed, using Platzi's video, ¿Cuál es el origen del dinero? That's what is the origin of money, for those who don't speak Spanish, to see how people managed to trade and accumulate wealth.
So no trips to the ATM back then, huh?
Not quite. Think more along the lines of, I'll trade you this woolly mammoth tusk for a few bushels of berries.
Bartering, that's right, good old-fashioned trading.
Exactly. Except imagine trying to barter before we even had language. There's actually evidence that bartering predates our ability to speak.
Wow, so like grunting and pointing at stuff, that's wild. But I guess when you need something, you find a way to communicate.
Exactly. But you can imagine it had its limitations.
Oh, I bet. Like, what if your berries went bad before you could trade them?
You got it. Perishability was a huge problem. Trying to build wealth with things that rot or get eaten by wild animals, not a great long-term strategy.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what did people do? Find something a little less, fleeting.
You could say that livestock, especially cows, became a popular form of currency.
Cows. Really? I never thought of cows as money.
Well, they had a lot going for them. They lived relatively long lives. They could produce valuable things like milk and calves, and they were pretty useful for, well, a lot of things.
Okay, that makes sense. Durable, valuable, useful. But imagine trying to, like, walk your cow down to the market to buy something.
That's where things get even more interesting. Because believe it or not, seashells enter the picture. Specifically, these small, white, round ones.
Seashells. As money.
It might seem strange to us now, but they're relatively scarce, difficult to fake, and get this, they even held a certain status.
Like a fancy shell was a sign of wealth.
Kinda, much like gold will become later on. It's all about finding something relatively rare and valuable that everyone agrees is worth trading.
From cows to seashells, huh? It's amazing how people found ways to create value and exchange goods. But I'm guessing things got a little more complicated when civilization started popping up.
You're absolutely right. Larger settlements meant more people, more resources to manage, and a greater need for, shall we say, protection.
Ah, you're talking about powerful figures who could keep things in order.
Exactly. And these figures, well, they weren't exactly shy about asking for something in return for their services.
Oh, yeah, I bet those early rulers didn't accept seashells as payment, so taxes were born.
You got it. But here's the thing. Imagine trying to figure out how much of your grain harvest to pay as tax. You couldn't exactly say, oh, just take a handful.
Right, you needed a way to measure and quantify things.
And that need, my friend, spurred the development of mathematics. It's incredible how this need to pay taxes actually pushed us towards greater understanding and eventually civilization itself.
Wow, taxes leading to civilization. That's a plot twist I didn't see coming. But I'm guessing there were still some bumps along the road to, like, actual coins and paper money.
Oh, definitely. Different cultures experimented with all sorts of things. Get this, in Italy, they used Parmesan cheese wheels.
Cheese wheels, like rolling giant wheels of Parmesan down the street to pay for things.
It sounds funny,
Yeah.
but they actually made sense. They were relatively easy to transport, hard to counterfeit, and of course, valuable.
I guess people really loved their Parmesan. So we've gone from livestock to seashells to cheese. What came next in this monetary feast?
The Chinese, they made a huge leap forward by developing coins based on actual commodities, like gold, silver, and even iron. And these coins were pretty cool. They had holes in them so they could be strung together on ropes for measuring.
Like a portable counting system. Pretty clever. But didn't relying on things like gold and silver have its own problems?
Oh, absolutely. The value of those commodities could fluctuate, and rulers sometimes cheated by mixing less valuable metals with gold or silver to create more coins, which basically devalued the currency.
That reminds me of how the metal in a U.S. penny is now worth more than the penny itself. It's crazy.
Exactly. The actual material isn't always worth what the coin represents. And that instability paved the way for another major shift, the rise of paper money.
Now we're talking. Paper money that's getting closer to what we use today. How did that come about?
It was a gradual process, and believe it or not, Kublai Khan played a role. He initially used large iron blocks as currency, but carrying those around was, well, cumbersome.
I can imagine. So what did he do?
He started issuing paper notes with the imprint of the iron blocks on them, basically a representation of the real deal.
So money backed by iron, that's a pretty heavy-duty system.
It was, and the Ming Dynasty later adopted a similar system, but they ran into some trouble when people realized the paper wasn't really backed by enough iron.
Oh.
Yeah, it led to hyperinflation. People lost confidence in the paper money, and its value plummeted.
Ouch. A classic example of why trust is so important when it comes to money. But the
Hmm.
idea of paper money stuck around, right?
Absolutely. And this is where Europe enters the scene with this surprising group of players. Goldsmiths.
Goldsmiths. Wait, like the people who make jewelry.
Yes, they had these secure vaults to store their gold, and other people started asking to store their gold with them for safekeeping. The goldsmiths would give them receipts for their deposits.
So like a claim check for your gold.
Exactly. And guess what? People started trading those receipts instead of the actual gold. It was much easier and safer to carry around a piece of paper than a heavy bag of coins.
I see. Those receipts basically became the earliest form of banknotes.
It's a brilliant example of how innovation happens in unexpected ways.
Mm-hmm.
And those goldsmiths, well, they became some of the first bankers, facilitating trade and the exchange of these notes. Families like the Medicis built entire banking networks.
So we're seeing the seeds of a more sophisticated financial system taking root. But I'm guessing it was still the Wild West out there, with all sorts of different notes and practices.
You're right. Things were pretty chaotic until around the 19th century, when governments started stepping in to create more standardized banknotes and establish central banks to oversee things.
That makes sense. You need some kind of authority to create order and stability. But what made people trust those government-issued notes more than, say, those goldsmith receipts?
Governments made their notes the only acceptable form of payment for taxes.
Ah, clever. So if you wanted to pay your taxes, you had to use the government's money, which instantly gave it value and widespread trust. It's amazing how all these seemingly unrelated things, taxes, goldsmiths, even seashells, all came together to shape the monetary systems we have today.
It's a fascinating journey. And believe it or not, the story of money is far from over.
In the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore how these ancient systems have evolved into the complex financial world we live in today. You know, it's really amazing to think about how far we've come from bartering cows to this whole intricate world of finance. But you know what's kind of wild?
What's that?
It seems like the more advanced our financial systems get, the more we run into some of those same old problems that messed things up way back when.
Yeah, it's like this weird paradox. We've got all these fancy tools and models, but those basic issues of trust, stability, and value, well, they just keep popping up.
Yeah, can you, give me some examples of those historical echoes?
Tons. Take inflation, for instance. The idea that our money loses value over time, that's been a headache for ages. You see it with the Roman coins, the Ming Dynasty's paper money mess, and even today.
Makes sense. Every generation wants to figure out how to keep their money worth something, right? Are there any other big parallels that stand out?
Oh, for sure. Think about fractional reserve banking, that system where banks lend out more money than they actually have on hand.
Yeah, it's like financial juggling, right?
Exactly. And while it can help boost the economy, it comes with risks too. The possibility of bank runs and financial crises, those have been recurring themes throughout history.
It's like we built this super complex financial system, but it's still vulnerable to human nature and those same old systemic weaknesses.
Right on. You can see echoes of this in the tulip mania back in the 1600s, the South Sea Bubble in the 1700s, even the financial crisis back in 2008.
So history's trying to tell us something, huh? Be careful, be smart, don't get too greedy.
Yeah, a little skepticism and healthy regulation never hurt. But I think amidst all this complexity, we sometimes lose sight of what money really is.
What do you mean?
Well, money's not just numbers on a screen or pieces of paper changing hands. It's a representation of time, effort, resources.
Mhm.
It's how we value and exchange what we create and what we do.
You know, it's easy to think of economics as like a zero-sum game. Someone wins, someone loses.
That's a really common misunderstanding. But it's important to remember that especially now in our interconnected world, economics can be a win-win situation. Value gets created and shared, everyone benefits.
Got any examples of that?
Think about the internet. It made companies like Google and Amazon insanely wealthy, but it also connected billions of people, gave them access to information, communication, and tons of new economic opportunities.
Right. It's not just about competition. It's about collaboration and the potential for everyone to gain something. And speaking of new opportunities, let's talk about the future of money and this whole digital revolution.
It's moving fast. In China, platforms like WeChat Pay and Alipay are everywhere. They've totally changed daily life and how people do business.
And here in the US, we've got PayPal, Venmo, Apple Pay popping up everywhere. It's like money is becoming invisible.
And of course, we can't forget cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin being the big one.
Yeah, crypto is definitely shaking things up.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think a bunch of computers can create and manage a whole new form of money. What are some of the big changes you see coming with digital currencies?
Well, one of the most important things is the potential to give more people access to financial services.
Mm-hmm.
People in developing countries who maybe don't have bank accounts, cryptocurrencies, and mobile payment systems could let them participate in the global economy.
Wow, that's huge. It could really level the playing field for millions of people.
Yeah,
But it also makes me think about security regulations, the role of governments in this whole new landscape.
definitely. There are huge opportunities, but also challenges.
Mm-hmm.
One big question is, where does the value of money even come from in a digital age where it feels like you can create and send it with a click?
It's like we're back to that fundamental question, what gives money value? Is it still about trust and collective belief, or is it something totally different now with algorithms and code calling the shots?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's something we'll keep digging into in the final part of this deep dive. Stay tuned for more insights into this crazy world of money.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've gone from trading cows to the edge of this whole digital money revolution. But now the big question, what happens NXT? What's the future of money?
I think it's easy to think, oh, we're all going cashless, right? Everything digital, every transaction tracked, maybe even controlled by some algorithm.
It kind of feels like that sometimes. But yeah, a world where every financial move is like recorded that brings up all sorts of questions about privacy, who's in control, all that.
Exactly. It's not just a simple cash is out, digital is in kind of thing.
Mhm.
The future is probably going to be a mix, right? Different kinds of money all existing together, serving different purposes.
So there's still a place for old school cash.
Oh, absolutely. Cash has its advantages, especially for privacy and accessibility. Think about people who maybe aren't comfortable with technology or don't always have reliable internet access.
Right. Not everyone's walking around with the latest smartphone or living in Silicon Valley.
Exactly. And digital money definitely has its upsides. It's fast, convenient, no borders.
And like we were talking about before, it could help people who've been shut out of traditional banking get access to financial services. I mean, the potential for economic empowerment there is huge.
Absolutely. But we need to make sure these digital systems are developed and regulated responsibly. They have to be secure, fair, and protect people's privacy.
So much to consider. As we're moving into this new financial world, what should we be watching for? What's going to shape the future of money?
I'd say keep an eye on three big things: technology, regulations, and trust. Technology is going to keep changing, creating new forms of money and ways to pay. But those innovations need solid regulations to make sure consumers are protected,
Right.
the system stays stable, and to prevent illegal activities.
It all comes back to trust, doesn't it? Whether it's trust in a government-backed currency, a decentralized blockchain, some tech company managing our digital wallets, trust is the foundation for everything.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Without trust, even the coolest tech or the best regulations won't work. The future of money really depends on us, our choices, how we adapt and how we balance all these amazing opportunities with the risks that come with them.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today. From cows to seashells to the possibility of money that's basically programmed, it's clear the story of money isn't over. It's alive, it's changing. It shows our creativity, our hopes, and sometimes, yeah, our mistakes.
It's a wild ride. And as we head into this uncharted territory, we really need to understand money's past its core principles, what our choices might lead to, because in the end, the future of money is in our hands.
So what do you think that future looks like? Will we be using Bitcoin for everything, relying on some AI-powered digital wallet, or maybe sticking with good old cash? Let us know what you think. This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey.